Hello everyone. Today I am going to speak on the anti-anginal agents. The specific learning objectives of today's session are: at the end of the session, the learner must be able to define and classify acute coronary syndromes, classify anti-anginal agents, and describe the mechanism of action, pharmacological actions, adverse effects, and therapeutic uses of nitrates, calcium channel blockers. Describe the role of anti-anginal agents in treatment of angina, and enumerate the drugs and their rationale for use in treatment of acute coronary syndrome. So acute coronary syndrome is a spectrum of a disease in which the signs and symptoms are related to decreased blood supply to the heart. Now this decrease in blood supply can be either transient and permanent. The blood supply to the heart are by the coronary arteries, and each of the branches of coronary artery supplies a specified part of the heart. Depending upon what part of the artery is blocked, the symptoms of the chest pain vary. The cause of acute coronary syndrome is blood vessel obstruction, and this blood vessel obstruction can occur suddenly or it can occur at a slow pace. Whenever it occurs at a slow pace, that can be due to gradual deposition of fat in the form of plaque, or there might be formation of a blood clot which we call as thrombosis, both of which can occur gradually and decrease the blood supply. The sudden obstruction can either be due to embolism, so whenever a blood clot is separated source of uh, from its source and goes towards another blood vessel and blocks it, we call it as an embolism. So this embolism can cause sudden obstruction. Another way there could be sudden obstruction is the vasospasm of the blood vessels. Although this spasm can reduce the blood supply, but it cannot totally cut the blood supply. So in the diagram to the left, we can see that whenever there is reduction in the blood supply, the blood supply is from the coronary arteries, which gives branches towards the heart muscles, and the reduction in blood supply leads first ischemia to the subendocardial zone, that is the tissue that is present from the inner side of the heart. So we call it as ischemic subendocardial crunch, and this is the area which will first show reduction in the blood supply. So whenever such reduction in blood supply occurs, the pain shoots in the form of chest pain or pain radiating from the shoulder towards the arm, that is the left shoulder most commonly. Now this angina can be divided depending upon what kind of symptoms the patient shows. Generally, whenever an exercise is performed, there is sympathetic stimulation, that is release of adrenaline in the body, which leads to vasodilation by action on the beta 2 receptors. But in patients of classical angina, that is the second diagram, in the second diagram, there is a permanent blockade by fat, plaque or atheroma. So this permanent block allows only small amount of blood to flow through, which is sufficient for the heart when we are at rest. But during exertion, the same person will need more amount of blood to perform exertion, and that will lead to reduction in the blood supply as compared to the demand, which can lead to now reduction in this subendocardial crunch and shooting of pain. So in classical angina, whenever a person walks briskly or does some exertion, he will feel pain, and when he takes rest, the symptoms will subside. In contrast to that, in variant angina, the person is at rest, but still uh, he has the symptoms of chest pain, and the reason for this is there is no blockade to the artery, but there is spasm of the artery which leads to sudden reduction in the blood supply. So a person at rest having chest pain is more likely to have variant angina, while a person who is exerting and then having pain is more likely to have classical angina. So how do we define angina? Angina is an episodic clinical syndrome due to transient myocardial ischemia. Ischemia is the reduction in the blood supply which leads to symptoms of pain and anxiety. While in infarction what happens is there is total blockade of the blood supply, due to which the tissue that is supplied by the vessel is uh, killed, which leads to more severe kind of symptoms. So angina is divided into stable, unstable and variant angina. As I already said, the classical angina or stable angina is characterized by chest or arm discomfort associated with physical exertion or stress, and is relieved within 5 to 10 minutes by rest and or sublingual nitroglycerin. So nitroglycerin is a vasodilator which will resume the blood supply and cause alleviation of symptoms. In unstable angina, one of the features at least are present, that is there is pain which occurs at rest for more than 10 minutes, and it is severe and of new onset. So this is the stable angina can be converted into unstable angina, wherein the pain which was previously of low intensity has now grown into the intensity, and it occurs with a crescendo pattern, that is distinctly more severe, prolonged or frequent than previously. So the severity of chest pain has increased as compared to stable angina, that is classical angina, and the duration has also increased, and it also occurs at rest. So this tells us that the classical angina is now getting transformed into unstable angina. In variant or Prinzmetal's angina, it is a syndrome of ischemic pain that occurs at rest but not usually with exertion. So this type of angina might seem similar to the unstable angina, but in variant angina there is spasm of the arteries which leads to sudden reduction in the blood supply. While in unstable angina there is increase in the size of the plaque formation or blockade of the artery, physical blockade, which leads to the features of unstable angina. Now this blockade most commonly may be due to embolism of some thrombus. So this is the picture of how an artery might be blocked with a plaque. So you can see above the smooth muscles of the arteries there is deposition of fat, and to the left you can also see that an artery can undergo a spasm, due to which suddenly there could be reduction in the blood supply. So ischemic heart disease, if we look at its classification, it can be divided mainly into two main types. That is one that occurs due to transient ischemia and other that occurs due to coronary thrombosis. Coronary thrombosis leads to total blockade of the artery and myocardial infarction, that is death of the tissue that is supplied by the thrombosed artery. And transient coronary ischemia, that we call as angina pectoris. Pectoris, that is related to the chest. So angina pectoris can be divided into one that occurs due to vasospasm of arteries, which we call as variant angina, where the vasospasm is at rest or during sleep, and the pain occurs at rest. If the angina pectoris is due to atherosclerosis, that is deposition of fat or atheroma, then in such case there will be symptoms of classical angina. So this angina is known as stable angina, and the symptoms occur whenever the person has some kind of exertion. While there might be unstable angina where the plaque ruptures and then there is platelet aggregation, that is formation of thrombus, which will lead to more severe symptoms as compared to classical angina, and we call it as a forerunner of myocardial infarction. So there are high chances that this unstable angina can be converted into myocardial infarction. The coronary syndrome is seen in patients who are male with cardiovascular complications of age more than 40 to 50 years, having genetic history of hypercholesterolemia, having family history of ischemic heart disease, and high levels of lipids in the blood in the form of hypercholesterolemia, patients with history of hypertension, smoking and diabetes, all these are at high risk of having acute coronary syndrome. Generally, the investigations that are performed on patients with history of chest pain are the ECG, the blood test, that is myocardial markers like troponin T and I. So these myocardial markers are the enzymes or proteins which are inside the cardiac myocytes, and when the death of these myocytes occur, these markers they are released into the blood, and the uh, high high level of these markers indicate the myocardial infarction. Imagings like angiography, 2D echo can also tell us which wall of heart is involved. So these are all investigations which can differentiate between different types of acute coronary syndromes. To define the acute coronary syndromes, depending upon the character of pain and whether the pain is relieved with a vasodilator and what happens to the enzymes on ECG and ECG. In case of stable angina, there is pain on exertion which responds to vasodilator. The enzymes levels are normal because no myocyte death has occurred, and the ECG is also often normal. In case of unstable angina, there is pain at rest and there is no effect with vasodilator. The enzyme levels are still normal because no myocyte death has occurred yet, but there is ST depression on echocardiogram or ECG. STEMI, that is ST elevated myocardial infarction. In this case, the ECG shows elevation of ST segment of the ECG, and the pain occurs at rest with no effect of glyceryl trinitrate or nitrates, that is vasodilator. The enzyme levels are elevated because infarction has occurred and ST elevation is seen. While in NSTEMI, that is non-ST elevated myocardial infarction, all is same but there is no ST segment elevation, that is the ECG does not show the signs of myocardial infarction. So these are all the acute coronary syndromes that can show the similar symptoms. So anti-anginal drugs are those agents which are used to alleviate the pain or prevent the attacks of angina. So these are classified depending upon their chemical classification or their action into nitrates. Nitrates are classified into short acting and long acting. Then we have beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, potassium channel openers, and some other drugs. If we classify these drugs on the basis of their clinical use, they can be classified as those used to abort or terminate the chest attack of chest pain. We have glyceryl trinitrate and isosorbide dinitrate for that, which is used as sublingual medication, and those used for chronic prophylaxis to prevent the further attack of angina. All other drugs that we have seen earlier come under this class. Coming to nitrates, nitrates are a chemical group of agents that are very commonly used to terminate the attack of angina pectoris or classical angina. So how do these drugs work? Whenever the drug is ingested, these organic nitrates are converted into nitric oxide, which causes activation of cyclic GMP kinase inside these vascular smooth muscles. This in turn causes increase in the cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP being an secondary messenger causes decrease in the calcium levels, intracellular calcium levels, and activation of cyclic GMP dependent protein kinase. Reduction in the intracellular calcium levels causes muscular relaxation as opposed to increase in calcium levels that causes muscular contraction. While activation of cyclic GMP dependent protein kinase causes the chain of events that lead to uncoupling of myosin and actin, which are the two parts of the proteins which are responsible for skeletal muscle or smooth muscle contraction. So both these events lead to ultimately muscle relaxation. Before coming to the mechanism of action of nitrates, let us discuss about some terms, that is preload, afterload and redistribution. So considering heart as a motor, the blood that comes to the heart is known as preload. So lesser the preload, the less load on the heart for pumping that blood. Similarly, the pressure against which the heart has to push the blood into the artery, that is the arterial pressure, that is known as the afterload. So nitrates reduce the venous capacitance, that is the dilatation of veins occur due to which less amount of blood comparatively goes towards the heart, and that is the preload reduction. And due to arteriolar dilatation there is again reduction in the afterload. So both these things make the heart more efficient to push the blood into the aorta. So all in all, what happens is that the heart will have to work less, and therefore the amount of oxygen and blood required by the heart will be less. The second thing is the redistribution. So consider two parts of the arterioles that supply the heart. One is the proximal and another is distal. So the distal part, when unable to supply blood to the heart, is dilated by the stimulus of ischemia. So ischemia itself is a very strong vasodilator which causes increase to the increased blood supply from that vessel. Now what do the nitrates do is nitrates dilate the proximal blood vessels. So what happens due to proximal blood vessels dilatation? More amount of blood will be shunted towards that blood vessel which is already dilated due to ischemia. So this kind of redistribution causes increased blood supply to the ischemic part of the heart. So altogether this is known as redistribution of coronary blood flow, and preload reduction, afterload reduction and redistribution, all three of these decrease the uh, symptoms of angina pectoris. The nitrates are highly lipid soluble, and that is why these drugs can be given by sublingual route as well as by topical route in the form of uh, dermal patches, and these drugs are extensively metabolized in liver. Therefore, the rate of absorption and metabolism both decide the duration of action of nitrates. Coming to adverse effects, owing to the dilatory effect of the nitrates, the dilatation of cranial blood vessels lead to throbbing headache, which tells us that the drug is actually doing its work. So, if the patient comes with such symptoms after he is being prescribed nitrates, so he can be assured that now the drug is acting. The other symptoms, that is flushing, weakness, sweating, palpitation, dizziness and fainting, these are the symptoms due to vasodilatation that lead to decrease in the blood pressure and reflex sympathetic stimulation in the form of sweating and palpitation. Then these nitrates, they combine with the hemoglobin to form methemoglobin, and as such in healthy population, hemoglobinemia is not a problem. In few patients, rashes can occur due to the intolerance to these drugs. Then there are two terminologies, that is tolerance and dependence. Tolerance meaning more amount of drug is required to see the same effect of the drug. So as and when the patient takes these drugs on daily basis, the effect fades away. This is known as tolerance. That is why drug holidays are given for nitrates, so that the patient regains the sensitivity to these actions. Then there is something known as dependence. So when the drug is stopped suddenly, the body will respond to it in the form of withdrawal effect, which we call as dependence. So there are variety of nitrates available for treatment of angina, out of which nitroglycerin is available in many dosages and different dosage forms. It is available by sublingual route, oral route, as a dermal patch, and also given by IV route in emergency cases. The duration of action again depends upon by which route it is given. Isosorbide dinitrate is a longer acting as compared to nitroglycerin, and the later drugs are again having longer duration of action in hours. So depending upon the uh, aim of giving this drug, generally nitroglycerin is preferred to terminate an attack of angina, while the other drugs, they are longer acting and are given for prophylaxis of angina. Isosorbide dinitrate and nitroglycerin are two important drugs that are given sublingually to terminate the attack of angina pectoris. So the most common use of nitrates is angina pectoris, both for treatment as well as prophylaxis. The other acute coronary syndromes are also treated with nitrates, like myocardial infarction, congestive heart failure, and left ventricular failure. In these patients, the heart is failing, and the reduction in preload and afterload helps the heart to gain strength and pump the blood. Then in biliary colic, there is spasm of the bile duct, which causes excruciating pain in the abdomen, and nitrates relieve this pain by causing smooth muscle relaxation of the bile duct. Similarly, esophageal spasm is a condition wherein the spasm of esophageal smooth muscles lead to difficulty in deglutition, and this is again helped with nitrates. Also, nitrates are used for cyanide poisoning. Coming to beta blockers, we have discussed till now nitrates. So beta blockers have been already covered in the earlier classes. Beta blockers are used in stable angina because the blockade of beta 1 receptor leads to reduction in cardiac work and therefore reduction in oxygen consumption. So for this, beta 1 selective agents are selected because beta 2 non-selective beta blockers also block beta 2 receptors and may lead to vasoconstriction of blood vessels. In unstable angina, these drugs are favored after administration of nitrates with or without calcium channel blockers, both of which are vasodilators. So if vasodilators are not given and directly beta blockers are given in unstable angina, there might be reduction in the heart work as well as reduction in blood supply, which can complicate the symptoms. The next class of anti-anginal drugs is calcium channel blockers, which are classified depending upon their chemical structure, but their mechanisms also differ according to the class. These are phenylalkylamines, that is verapamil, dihydropyridines, that is DHPs, the example of which is nifedipine, and benzodiazepines, that is diltiazem. All of these block the L type of calcium channels. So there are three main types of calcium channels that we have: L type, T type, and M type. The L type is the long-lasting current type of channel which is present at the SA node and AV node, and excitation contraction coupling in cardiac and smooth muscles is carried upon by this L type of channel. The T type of channel is mainly relevant with the SA node pacemaker activity, and N type, that is neuronal type of calcium channel, is important for transmitter release. So we need to keep in mind the L type of channel which is blocked by calcium channel blockers that we are discussing. These are important for excitation contraction coupling in the cardiac and other smooth muscles and conduction of SA node and AV node. So the main pharmacological actions that these drugs will have by blocking the calcium channels is relaxation of smooth muscles, that is mainly vascular smooth muscles, and negative chronotropic, inotropic, and dromotropic effects on the heart. So these effects are due to blockade of SA node and AV nodal activity. If we compare the prototypes of different classes of calcium channel blockers, nifedipine is the most potent among the classes, and if we look at the cardiac effects of these drugs, nifedipine causes increase in heart rate owing to the potent vasodilatory effect, and the other two drugs, that is verapamil and diltiazem, decrease the heart rate owing to their cardiodepressant effect. So nifedipine is a vasodilator leading to reflex sympathetic stimulation and increase in heart rate, while the other two drugs, they act on the SA and AV node and depress it, leading to decrease in the heart rate. When comparing the AV conducting velocity, verapamil is more potent, and next comes diltiazem, while nifedipine has no effect on AV node. When comparing the contractility of the heart, verapamil decreases the contractility, nifedipine increases by reflex sympathetic stimulation. The vascular smooth muscle relaxation is most with nifedipine and least with diltiazem. Owing to differences in their pharmacological actions, verapamil is mostly used for angina, arrhythmia, and hypertension. Nifedipine is mostly used for angina and hypertension, while diltiazem has uses similar to the verapamil. Among the dihydropyridines, nifedipine, which is a prototype, is a very short-acting calcium channel blocker, and due to this short action, there is high mortality seen among the patients of myocardial infarction because of the sympathetic stimulation that occurs. Felodipine has more vascular selectivity as compared to nifedipine. Amlodipine has a complete absorption and a long duration of action, due to which once daily dose of amlodipine is preferred in hypertensive patients. Nitrendipine has additional NO release property which gives additional vasodilatory action. Lacidipine is highly vasoselective as with felodipine. Nimodipine is cerebroselective and is preferred for cardiovascular surgery. Lercanidipine has a long duration of action, as so is the benidipine. Coming to uses of calcium channel blockers, these drugs being vasodilatory, they are used in angina pectoris, hypertension, for cardiac arrhythmias we have diltiazem and verapamil. For hypertrophic cardiomyopathy also calcium channel blockers are used to reduce the preload. For premature labor, nifedipine is used because it causes smooth muscle relaxation, particularly of the uterus. In patients with migraine and nocturnal cramp, verapamil is used. Calcium channel blockers are also used for Raynaud's disease, which is a peripheral vascular disease, wherein there is decrease in the blood supply to the periphery. There are rational combinations which are generally used to treat patients of angina, where one drug doesn't suffice or do not show any effect. The examples are beta blocker is used with longer acting nitrates So nitrates being vasodilatory, there are chances of reflex tachycardia. So beta blockers block the reflex sympathetic stimulation, and thus this combination has an advantageous effect. Similarly, beta blockers can be used with dihydropyridines, which also are vasodilators. Combination of nitrates and calcium channel blockers, both of which are vasodilators, is used when one of it is not sufficient to show its effect. Combination of all three can be done, that is nitrates, beta blockers and calcium channel blockers, among which verapamil and diltiazem are to be avoided, because beta blocker and verapamil and diltiazem, all of these are have inhibitory effect or depressant effect on the heart, which can lead to depression of the cardiac activity. The other classes of drugs which are used for angina, apart from nitrates, beta blockers and calcium channel blockers, are potassium channel openers and miscellaneous group of drugs. Potassium channel opener, that is nicorandin, acts on ATP sensitive potassium channels, which leads to hyperpolarization of vascular smooth muscles. Now, because potassium channel, when they open, they cause hyperpolarization, which is stimulated by nicorandin. There is depressant action on the vascular smooth muscles. Being a nitric oxide donor, increase in coronary blood flow is enhanced due to vasodilatory action. Among the other drugs that are used for treatment of angina are trimetazidine, ranolazine. Trimetazidine is a newer calcium channel blocker which has additional effect of prevention of lipid peroxidation and myocardial oxygen demand. It is used for stable angina as well as to prevent the sequelae or complications of myocardial infarction. Ranolazine inhibits the inward sodium current during ischemia. So this can lead to further complications of ischemia, which are prevented by ranolazine. Calcium load in cardiac muscle is decreased by sodium calcium exchanger. As we know that increase in the calcium in intracellular can lead to apoptosis or death of the cells, which is prevented by stimulation of sodium calcium exchanger, wherein sodium is sodium enters and calcium goes out of the cell. It also causes prolongation of QTc, due to which it reduces the incidence of arrhythmia. We have a direct bradycardiac agent, that is ivabradine, which blocks hyperpolarization activated current through sodium channels in SA node, due to which there is production of pacemaker current. So this leads to decrease in the heart rate. So in short, it causes hyperpolarization and decrease in the heart rate due to suppression of SA node. These channels get activated mainly during ischemia. So the activity of this drug mainly is seen whenever there is ischemia, and decrease in heart rate leads to decrease in oxygen demand, due to which it is effective in angina patients as well as in patients of myocardial infarction. This drug can cause disturbances in nocturnal vision. Antiplatelet drugs are also used in treatment of angina and other acute coronary syndromes. Among these, aspirin is the most commonly used drug, which inhibits the synthesis of thromboxane A2, which is a platelet aggregator. It is used in the dose of 75 to 325 milligrams daily. Ticlopidine and clopidogrel are other antiplatelet drugs which inhibit the ADP binding site and lead to inhibition of thrombosis. These drugs are used in unstable angina by preventing thrombosis in patients undergoing bypass grafting. No effect on prostaglandin synthesis occurs at the low dose of aspirin. Cilostazol is another antiplatelet agent which acts by inhibition of phosphodiesterase 3. and it has additional vasodilatory effect as well. Dipyridamole inhibits adenosine deaminase and phosphodiesterase, but it is not used in patients of angina due to coronary steal phenomena. That is, it reduces the blood supply to the affected artery and leads to worsening of angina. It is claimed that increase in the lipid levels in the blood leads to deposition of liquids and can lead to decrease in the caliber of the vessels, leading to angina and other acute coronary syndromes. So drugs like statins decrease the cholesterol level in the body and can help with increased levels of cholesterol. We have atorvastatin and rosuvastatin that are commonly used, and they are claimed to improve endothelial function, stabilization of platelets, and decrease inflammatory response. In patients with unstable angina and non-ST elevated myocardial infarct cases, the acute therapy is uh, giving oxygen so that maximum of oxygen is reached even if the blood supply is scarce. Bed rest is given for reducing the uh, load on the heart, and continuous ECG monitoring is done. Nitroglycerins, beta blockers and ACE inhibitors are also given. Antiplatelet therapy and anticoagulants in the form of heparin is given. When the patient stabilizes, antiplatelet therapy is continued along with beta blockers, calcium channel blockers and ACE inhibitors, and lipid lowering agents are added. Coming to myocardial infarction, so as already discussed, myocardial infarction is a condition wherein there is death of the myocytes, cardiomyocytes, which leads to severe pain and which might complicate into the arrhythmias and might also lead to death of the patient. So the common symptoms that are seen with myocardial infarction are pain, anxiety and apprehension. The chest pain is so excruciating that the patient is very anxious and apprehensive along with the debilitating pain that he has. So for that we can give opioids or diazepam. So opioids not only calms the patient but it also reduces the pain and anxiety. So we give morphine as an opioid. We can also give diazepam, which decreases the anxiety as well as makes the patient calm, and that is how diazepam can act. We provide oxygen so that whatever blood supply reaches the heart is having more of an oxygen. We maintain the blood volume by giving low molecular weight dextran if there is decrease in the blood volume, and correction of acidosis is done with sodium bicarbonate. In case the patient shows symptoms of arrhythmia, signs of arrhythmia on ECG, beta blockers or lidocaine can be given, which will have effect, depressant effect on the cardiac neuronal activity. In case of pump failure, the furosemide vasodilator or inotropic agents can be given. Furosemide decreases the volume and also causes venodilation, due to which preload is reduced and the load on the heart as a whole is reduced. Vasodilators also decrease the afterload and can help in pump failure. Inotropic agents, they increase the cardiac contractility and can help in pump failure. For prevention of thrombosis or its extension and embolism, antiplatelet agents like aspirin and anticoagulants like heparin are given so that there is no further platelet aggregation as well as coagulation of the blood. The thrombus that is already formed, which has led to this myocardial infarction, has to be lysed or cut down, and this process is known as thrombolysis, so that there is reperfusion of the part where the blood supply was lacking. For this, we have streptokinase, urokinase, and alteplase, which cause the lysis of the thrombus. for prevention of remodeling and congestive heart failure. So once myocardial infarction occurs, the heart tries to compensate for its failing action by increasing in the cardiac myocyte size wherever the tissue is alive, which is known as cardiac remodeling, which is again complicating the case. So to prevent this kind of remodeling, we have AC inhibitors and ARBs, and to prevent the future attacks, we have aspirin and clopidogrel, which are antiplatelet agents, so that thrombosis doesn't reoccur. Beta blockers are given, which again help in remodeling, and to control the hyperlipidemia, a low fat diet and statins are advised. So this is how patients of myocardial infarction are treated. Thank you all for your patient listening.